Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to talk a lot about percentages and everything that involves from this topic that you would learn in year 7 and year 8 maths. So let's begin with what exactly is a percentage, the definition, and some vocabulary that you need to know. So here you see a picture. So there's this could be from Africa. So there's some giraffes, wildebeest, there's some deer here in the front, and then you have a one lion. So the question is approximately what percentage of the image is giraffes? So giraffes are like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then if you count all the animals, there's also a hidden ostrich here. It would add up to some number, but percent is something out of 100. So in this picture you may not see 100 animals, but in case if this was adding up to 100, what would the giraffes take over, and what would the lion take over, how many lions would be there, and then wildebeest and deers. So that's what it is. So out of 100, what would that number be? um, that's basically the idea of percentage. Now shade the parts of each figure. Shade 10% of the figure. So what exactly is 10%? So let's see. This is what, if I put these two rectangles or square, let's just say these two squares together, so that we have a set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 parts to this. I know I'm putting two of these little squares together. So that means 10% means 10 of 100. 10 over 100. 10 over 100 means you can cancel off the zeros at the end. So it is 1 out of 10. So that means out of 10 squares, 1 is taken. So that like that, there's one taken here, one taken here. So if you color this piece, that is 10% of this entire rectangle with the little squares. Now what is 25%? So 25 out of 100. Remember the percent, cent, century, cent, 100. So 25 over 100. So that means 25 can be written as 10 plus 10 plus 5, correct? So we, from this picture, we figured out that if I shade these two, that's 10%, another 10%, so 10 plus 10, 20%, and I need only 5% more, so that means I'm going to shade only this piece. So if you had this as a printed sheet, then you would have seen a color over here, 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 and here. Next, 50%. Everybody should know 50% is half, so we would choose to color all of this, right? You can do it this way or you can do it this way. It's up to you. Then 75%. Again, so half plus 25%. We figured out half is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 50%. Then 10, 20, and a 5. That would be 75%. Then 90% means you would have shaded entirely, leaving just these two blank. So understanding percentages is, we have seen that, what it is out of 100. Okay, now before we start working out problems in figuring out percentages and seeing applications of percentages, there are a few skills that I want to revise. So you guys have to know what a proper fraction is, how to convert fractions to decimals. That's a very important skill. So here's the two examples. So 5 over 11 or 5 divided by 11. You can do 5, and then 5 is a very small number compared to 11. So definitely you should know that if there are 5 cookies and you're sharing with 11 people, then each person is never going to get a whole cookie. So it's going to be part of a cookie, right? So that little part is going to be in decimals. So in math we have a concept of if you put 0, because we know that it's going to be a part of the whole, so whole, they're never going to get a whole thing, so it's part of it. So by putting 0 dot or 0 decimal, you can introduce this 0 right here. So 11 times 4, now this has become 50, so definitely 50 can be divisible by 11, right? So then 11 times 4 is 44. Then you subtract, so 50 minus 44, that will result in 6. So now you don't have to keep adding any more decimals or zeros. You can just introduce another 0 here and you can go on. So 11 times 5 is 55. You subtract, which is 5, and then you put another 0 and keep going on, and then again it's going to repeat. The loop is repeating. This is a good example of a recurring decimal. So we can see that this is never going to end. The pattern keeps repeating. Which pattern? 0.45, 0.4545. So instead of writing this as a long repeating numbers, we can just say 0.45 with a line on the top. Another example, 5 divided by 12. It's like 12 people sharing 5 cookies. You definitely know that everybody are going to get a part of a cookie. None of them are going to get a whole cookie. So what we are going to see, we are going to put 12 here, right? 5 is too small. So I'm going to put a 0 here, making this a 0 dot. So if you want to have 0 dot, then you can introduce a 0 here, and vice versa. So 12 times 4 is 48. So the remainder is 2. You don't have to put any more decimals or zeros, just introduce another 0 here. So 12 times 1 is 12. You subtract, that's 8. Make it a 0, 80. So 12 times 6 is 72. Again 8, 80. 12 times 6 is 7. So you can clearly see another repeating pattern here. So how would you write this as a recurring decimal? 0.416, and you put a line on 6 because 6 is the repeating number. All right, so these are some prior skills. We looked at what happens when the denominator is bigger than the numerator, and so that becomes your proper fraction. So you're going to get decimal numbers. So this is how you would convert a fraction to a decimal. And we also looked at recurring decimals and how to write them, correct? So this is still a skill that you would want to know before you get into percentages. So now let's see. Percentages, what's the outcome? Now predict the result of picking a random card from the set of cards below. Complete the probability chart by filling out the missing values. Well, there is a chart here, and we can see that how we can convert a fraction to a decimal to a percentage. So let's look at the first one, a green card. So how many green cards do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9, and the total is 16. So 9 over 16. So you can do the division and figure out that it is going to be 0.5625. Now to convert this as a percentage, all you're going to do is times it with 100. So when you times something with 100, 100 has 2 zeros. So from this ones place, so from this end point number, all you have to do is move, place the dot in such a way that got distracted. So the dot is placed in such a way that there are 2 numbers after the dot, because you're timesing it with 100, and 100 has 2 zeros, and that will move your dot over to after 5, 6. So that's what you would have done. So you're moving, because you're timesing it with 100, this dot has moved now to 56.25. But don't forget to put that percent symbol. Now I'll just do the final one. A card with number less than or equal to 12. A card with a number less than or equal to 12. which means it eliminates 13, 14, 15, and 16. So for these four, so this condition is applicable to all the numbers that are less than 12 and equal to 12. So not 13, not 14, not 15, not 16. Okay, so if you divide this, you would get 0.75, and then again times it with 100. So I got to move the dot to the right, two numbers to the right, because 100 has two zeros. So you're just moving the dot to the right, two numbers. So that makes it 75%. Now, finding percentage of a quantity, all you have to do is, if they ask you 25% of 40, of should be replaced with times. So use your calculator. 25, make sure you put this percent symbol, times 40, and that should equal to 10. Now, if you don't have a calculator and you have to do mental math, all you're going to do is to remove the percent symbol. You're going to write it as 25 over 100. So we know that we can divide this with 25. So 25 divided by 25, it's 1. 100 divided by 25, that would be 4. And then 4 divided by 4, this would be cancelled and become 1. And 40 divided by 4, that's 10. So your result is 10. So what is 25% of 40? The answer is 10. Similarly, you can slow down the video or pause the video, and you can actually see the different examples that I have done. So you can try with calculator and without calculator. So all you're trying to see is like simple ways of cancellations, because the numerator and denominator, the numbers can cancel each other. And if you, oh, this is another cool one. If you have a 0 at the end and there's a 0 at the end, you can simply cancel those two. And then you have 10 here. This 0 can be cancelled with this 0. So then you simply have 2 times 8, which is 16. So yeah, the same thing with this one. Now, one of the biggest applications of understanding percentages is adding taxes. So in Australia, we do have something called as GST, goods and service tax, and it is 10%. So let's say if you want to know what is 10% of 60, all you have to do is do 10% times 60, and which is $6. Or in other words, you're just putting a dot after one number. Okay, so from the ones place, all you have to do is just go to the left and put a dot. And then so this example is, it says new pay is 60 plus 6. So basically it is including a 10% of GST. So I don't know the whole entire word problem where it came from, but by looking at the math, that's what I'm able to figure it out. My apologies. CP here. Okay, let's another common application that we see around every day. So let's say the cost price of a television. Televisions cannot be for 900. I don't know. Let's just assume a expression or a random example. So cost price of a television set is $900. And it is discounted as 30%. Okay, so how would you figure out the sale price? So 30% of 900 is $270. So that means you are saving $270. So the actual sale price should be 900 minus 270, and that would result in $630. Calculating percentages. So 3 over 10, all you have to do is just make it 0.3, and then 0.3 times 100 is 30%. Just make sure, usually the units have to be the same. The numerator, if it's in minutes, try to convert the denominator also into minutes. I can clearly see that this is an example of 24 minutes and 2 hours. How much is 24 minutes when you compare it with 2 hours of time? So 2 hours has 2 times 60 minutes, which is 120. So if you put that in the calculator, you should get 20%. all same examples. Just try to simplify, get to the decimal, and then times it with 100. And all you have to do is move two numbers to the right. So if you have a decimal number, 0 point something, just remember when you times it with 100, the dot has to move two digits to the right. Now, unitary method of finding values is very important. So in this example, I'm showing you two different methods to get to the answer. So 9% value is equal to $180. So if 9% is $180, what is the original price? So you can create two columns like this, percents on one side and dollars on the other column side. So and the unknown is your x. So all you have to do now is cross multiply. So x times 9% is equal to 100% times 180. To isolate your x, divide both sides with 9%. And if you type in the rest of the stuff in the calculator, you would get $2,000. Now this method can work for anything. I call this like a cross multiply technique. So all you have to do is arrange percents on one side and dollars on one side, and then you would just simply do it. Now the other method is, if they are saying 9% of a value is 180, you want to go to 1%. So what would you do to get to 1%? Divide it with 9. So 9 divided by 9, that's 1. Whatever you did on one side, you got to do it on the other. So 180 divided by 9 is actually 20. So 1% of a value is 20. So now if you want to get 100%, all you have to do is take this and times it with 100, isn't it? 1 times 100 is 100. So 100%. Whatever you times on one side, you got to do it on the other. So 20 times 100 is 2,000. So there we go, two techniques. But I think I'm going to use a lot I'm going to use method 2 in explaining my problems in the next slides. So the next one is, another important observation is all the percentages that we find doesn't have to be less than 100. Sometimes in the percentage world, it can be greater than 100%. Like for example, what is 120% of $650? So it is possible. So something can be greater than 100. So in that way, nothing to panic. You would have done 120 divided by 100 times 650, or you type it in the calculator as is and you will figure out the answer. So what is 125% of 1200? So the same technique is applicable. So this slide, just I wanted to show you that the percentages can be greater than 100%, and you would do the same math calculations as you would have done for numbers that are below 100. Okay, here comes our first example. I save, zoom back in. So I save 20% of my pay, which is $110 per day. What is my daily pay? So 20% of a value is $110. I want to get to 1% and then to 100%. So that's my steps. So if I want to get to 1, all I have to do is 20 divided by 20, 1%. So you got to divide on both sides, isn't it? So 110 divided by 20, that would give you 5.5. So that means 1% in this situation is $5.5. So now you want 100%, right? So then times it with 100. So 5.5 times 100 is 550. So this person is saving 20% of what she's earning. Very good. Now this one. I grew 20% taller this year. That means compared to last year, this person grew 20% taller. I'm 180 centimeters tall now. At the start of the year, okay, so at the start of the year. So what you need to understand is this person grew 20% taller from last year. So we are comparing our original value to last year. So I have done something like this here. So let's say in 2024, the height was treated as 100%. Okay, so the person grew 20% taller. So that means in 2025, when you're measuring the height, you have to treat it as 100 plus 20, which is 120%. Okay, so I am 180 centimeters tall now. That 180 is referring to 120%. Again, I want to get to a unitary percent, which is 1%. So I'm dividing both sides with 120. And then finally times it with 100. So last year, the height was 150 centimeters. So this person grew from 150 to 180, which is 20% increase in the height. Okay, so in the next example, so this person's original weight, we are trying to find the original weight. What is the situation here? This person lost 15% of their weight and they currently weigh 93.5 kilograms. So that means 100 was the original weight. If I'm trying to get back to the original weight, I need to get to 100%. So but the person right now lost 15%. So 100 minus 15, that is 85%. 85% is 93.5 kilos. So we are going to divide both sides with 85. 1% is 1.1 kilogram. To get to 100%, times it with 100. So the original weight was 110 kilograms. With the loss of 15% of the weight, they dropped their current weight to 93.5 kilos. Whoa, that's wonderful. Next, how many kilos did they lose? When you say 15%, it doesn't mean 15 kilos. 15% of 110 is 110 minus 93.5, which is 16.5. You could do that, or you could have done 1.1 times 15% and you would have got 16.5 kilograms. So hope this makes sense. Moving on. Yeah, so this is another common example. In your class, you might be doing so many tests and the teachers would put scores for you. And sometimes they would put percentages and you would be wondering, how did that happen? Where did that come from? So this is what it is. Let's say a test is out of 25 and you scored 15. So 15 over the total, which is 25, and then you just do times 100, and that would convert it into percentage. Okay, so if they give you percent, you would divide with 100 because percent is always out of 100. But when you are trying to convert a fraction to a percent, you are multiplying it. I hope you got the difference. Then understanding the decimal numbers and its value is helpful. So 0.2 can be treated as 0.20. 0.02 is a very small number. It's like 2%. And then 0.22 is 22%. So in the order, if you look at it, 0.02 is the smallest one. You can convert them into percentages. You can take any decimal number and times it with 100 and then see what it is. And then you can easily place them on the number line. Okay, that's one strategy that you can make use of to figure out which decimal is bigger and which decimal is in the order of ascending order. So, yeah. All right. Then comes these two good examples, including GST. Including GST means there is this original price of the product and they added the GST, which is 10% of that value, and they're calling out the final price. So Adrian is purchasing Nintendo, which is advertised at $700, including 10% GST, right? So that means the $700 is not 100%. It is 100% plus 10% of the GST, which is making it 110%. So 110% is equal to $700. So divide both sides with 110. So then you would get 1% and then times it with 10. Oh, you just want to figure out the GST. So GST is 10%. That would be 63.60. I hope this made sense, right? So once you get 1%, you can times it with any number to get that percent of the value. So that's why I like this unitary method to figure out the percentages. Caleb, Joshua, the two famous characters in the Bible who conquered the promised land. I really like that name. So I'm using Joshua and Caleb paid $65 for their movie tickets, including GST. Again, when they say including GST, you're looking at the 100% plus 10%, making it 110%. So 110% is equal to $65. Divide both sides with 110. That would give you 1% value, which is this. And to get to the GST, how much you paid, that's 5.90. So therefore, the GST paid by Caleb and Joshua is $5.90. I hope you're getting the hang of this. Now, moving on. So let's review. So goods service tax is 10% in Australia. So you have the original price, and if there is a discount, we have to take away the discount. The sale price is the final price that you actually pay money to get the product. Okay, so final price including GST is always the original price plus GST, which is treated as 110%. Okay, let's see some more examples. If the original price is $240, what is the final price? Final price should be, you have to add the GST. So straight away, 10% of 240 is $24. So 240 plus 24 is 264. If the GST, next example, if the GST paid on an item is $17, so that means 10% is 17, 1% is 1.7. Original price has to be treated as 100%, so you times it with 100, so you end up as 170. Now, what is the final price? Final price is original price plus GST, 170 plus 17, so 187. I'm pausing it for a little bit for you guys to process this information. The final price of an item is $242. Find its original price. Again, final price is including GST. So you get to 1% and then times it with 100. Anu and Jade went to store and purchased Twilight series at a 25% discounted price and paid $35 including GST. So now here there is a discount that has been applied. So you have to first do 100 minus 25%, 75% of the original value plus your 10% GST, which makes it as 85%. So whenever there is a discount, you take away that from 100 and then add GST, and then you can get to 1% and then finally times it with 100. So then you get to the original price. I'll pause it again. So there's a difference. Some kids, I have noticed that they play around, and when you just estimate it, it would be $42, but $42 is not correct. It should be actually $41, and that is because you have to first take away the discount price and then add the GST. Don't subtract it from 110. That would be an error. Okay. Finally to my last example. All right, Josh purchased a pair of shoes, Air Jordan Travis Scott online, discounted at 15%, and paid a price of $2,695, including GST. Find the original price. So including GST is 110%, right? But just want to go back. Oh, same thing here. So with 15% discount, okay, 100% minus 15, then plus 10, that ended up as 95%. Guys, I think my apologies. You can do like that as well. So 110% minus 25, you would still end up as 85. I just initially thought that we would make a mistake with our percentages, but yeah. So here I have shown you that it is including GST is 110%, and then take away the 15%, which makes it 95%. So the 95% value is this, divided by 95, you get the 1% value, then times it with 100. So the price of this shoes is $2,836.84. Pause the video, take a look at the working out. It should be quite clear. I have scaffolded everything. So yeah, thanks again. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Thanks, guys.